So the way in which the Dharma-ratna is described is as a community of irreversible bodhisattvas. Then Sangha, yes, as a community of irreversible bodhisattvas, and that irreversibility is described several ways. One is the irreversibility of their attitude, and a second way is their conduct.
That Satambu that is London to the society, Satambune Shabby, dKon. The Shabby San Satambu, Lenny on the core of Mrs. Taleni on the core of the Syria Maris, Rain Bashi, which covered 20 years, Lord Nigeris, Joegone, Tasho, Sambecones, that Joegone Society, or Chiltoba Missile in such Joegone, Chimitobache. Sambecone, Rani Bashi, Cheto, Talbot and the year, Lord Keva Missile and Sana. Sambecone can, so we change the Chimitobas, but that's the son. Just on Chimito, so Chimito
Correlate Chimito, the same Yotos figure.
Money call it the name to the second, they need to join. Oh, just a correlate, have another cover, shooting fancy. They need to only the correlate part dog. That didn't be a carson in Yaranga. Shuta, America, Chunta, Chimon said, Jerva. Chimon said, usually give civil and Timber says. And Chula, the Bala Chirwas here, they need to. 치명도 세트 저거를 치명 와서 열봐. 따디 열봐. 장세 파고 사 담불에 돈이 내미 중기 그거를 저 뒤에 양아래. 그래서 기초를 보내지.
기초를.
기초를 보내.
So one of the ways in which the irreversibility is described or explained is, first of all, that this here in terms of the Sangha Ratna in this third topic, the that marks the attainment of irreversibility is identified with the first of the 10 Arya Bodhisattva stages. And so irreversibility, one sense of it in terms of their conduct is tied to the notion that was alluded to previously, saying that once the Arya Bodhisattvas achieve the transcendent stage, then they have eradicated qualities of sickness, old age, and death, which is normally equated with nirvana. But here it has a special meaning in terms of Mahayana practice, and it's interpreted as meaning that these Arya Bodhisattvas no longer are subject to rebirth in samsara by the power of karma and mental afflictions. So that's the irreversibility in terms of their conduct. Then in terms of their attitude, then they are irreversible in the sense that they will no longer revert to a form of attitude in which they would pursue their own liberation at the expense of abandoning others. So it's kind of irreversible in those two senses. Irreversible in they do not take birth again in samsara under the strength of karma and mental affliction, and irreversible in the sense that they no longer are vulnerable to falling into an inferior path.
Jampa sibi amarwa, rete tandeti randu ichi sambaikere kubachumde koneta. Ani janju semle chermendoa. Janju sem ani nyanu suna ta nyarandu tungera.
No.
Jida di sonam chungu kapsu janju semle nyamni. 팀에 동안 예스 제가 야리티다 손은 딩에 세르트도 생기 통해 삼바이냐 삼바메 메가바시르바 세르트도스 삼바이냐 메시베야사 세르트도 생기 시르바 딩에 레티 단데티 사당분에 삼베코네 녀랑
미시바
메시레 따라도 이치게 삼박만 중에 전주가 생된 도바 메시르바
이 가르사 아니 소람 중이 감들라 아니 사벨 아라니디 정요만에 쓰이는
디발리한테 좀 야만에 단들
사담은이
사담은 했더니 메디 지바티 사담은 메치 지 맨데 지가 지르지 맨데 메디기 지바티 지르지 사담은 것도 이봐 사이게가 메디기 지바티 되어 있어
이는 한데 사담은 가면 이 알사
란디
란디 Somebody give me see. Okay. So this irreversibility, in the sense of not reverting to the lower path, is described as rangden yije. Rangden means seeking your own well-being to the exclusion of others. Then yije means this way of thinking, this manaskara, this way of bringing in a manifest form this kind of selfish orientation. So it's saying that on the first Arya Bodhisattva stage, that kind of bringing forth that selfish, in the special meaning of selfish orientation, cannot occur. So irreversibility is interpreted in that sense. However, then there in the sutras there are a range of levels of bodhicitta. So in the Paccekaparamita Sutras, there is a formulation which says that there are 22 different versions of bodhicitta as one progresses along the path. So the first one is when you initially gain bodhicitta at the beginning of the accumulation path, and that is Sogalam Chungmu. Sogalam Chungmu means then the smaller level of the accumulation path. Then there's a middling level, and then there's a great level of the accumulation path, the first of the 5 paths. So when you're at the initial stage of the accumulation path, this smaller stage of the accumulation path, even though you have a genuine bodhicitta, it's vulnerable. That kind of bodhisattva is capable of abandoning his or her enlightenment mind, and therefore falling away from the Mahayana path. Once a practitioner reaches the middling level of this first path, Sogalam, accumulation path, then this becomes the second of the 22 kinds of bodhicitta, and it's described as resembling gold, the gold-like form of bodhicitta. And that form of bodhicitta is generally recognized to be one where you will not, in fact, fall away from that commitment to pursue enlightenment for the sake of others. So there are different ways in which to understand what it means not to be capable of losing your bodhicitta. So here we are at a pre-transcendent stage where, in some sense, one will no longer give it up in practical terms, even though it might be, in terms of what obstacles you still are subject to, theoretically possible, but not practically possible. Once you reach then the first of the Arya Bodhisattva stages, then it's no longer possible in some sense. So then I raised the question, well, in the morning class, in response to the question, there was the point that you don't eliminate the seeds of this selfish tendency to reach the 8th stage. Rinpoche confirmed, yes, that's right. So here we are at the first level of transcendent stage, which represents irreversibility of attitude, meaning that rangden yije, rangden means seeking your own welfare, that kind of orientation of the mind will no longer occur, and so you are irreversible in terms of your attitude. Clearly, there are some further clarifications that need to be made to distinguish it more fully.
다 되네. 이 지단 친구들 다 세. 전주선 어느 비 저랑기네 그 친구들 다 뒀어. 온주기 통계네. 온부 뛰고 되게 전주선들의 온부 뉴스이야. 사이케베 인더스 친구들 다 뒀어. 이거는 여기 단지 사기로 매지 집에서 제세티 냐라 잘준데 고방문도 제 드네야 유니티 친구들 다지 사기로 미슈 두메리 그래
범투고
온부티가 사진 날 건배운게 아니 시티 시티가 되다 날 건배운게 공부심도 지어야서 바로 봐도 나 공부하기 라비지 선바 바로 봐도 시디 아니 집이 시디 되니 그 바로 봐도 저 예지라
원부투고 있나래
원부투고 디스찬스 어디셔서 단지 사태만 좀 우리 집에서 제스가티
알았어
다티래 연주생들의 야를 원부투고티 계집 장애 숨도 쳐사거니 장애 윤도 쳐사거니 장애 주스 쳐사거니 장애 숨도 소송사 장애 실주 쳐사거니 스지네 제주생들 나 시래
충신 균주
죽이신 됐다고 아니 남부 치신다고 인인들 주었다고 그런 인들이 네 그래서 그래 이기는 신이 유기 주었다고 이기는 신 이들 줘봤으니까 이때 요 대단 요 시대가 이 세대는 삼바다 필레 다때는 인데 저것이 저는 축이 신들이 그 어떻게 말 저들이 남부치 신들 저들이 인데 저것이 저거 인데 이것도 저것이
이만 단자기로
제체네
이들
이들 봤어요. 그래서 단지 아이씨 나 손에 제가 손에 잠이 시주 쳐서 그녀들이 얘랑 다 주는 거만 문제 어디냐 상계 훈련이 상계 커브이 그래서 그 시디를 공부처럼 인상 시디글로지 얘는 제일 그중에 그 상계보다 꽤 중요해요. 뒤에서 들을 잠이 시주도 쳐 잠이 숨이 쳐 뒤디나리야 그래서 새로운 지기 타주는 그날이야 타주는 타주는 그날 어디 저방아야 했어 그래서 저방아야 나네 저거디 제가 장생 온지 치매도 다 담부터야 돼 사제는 미시투메 어디지 뒤에서 뒤에서 단내미게 그 통계디 오늘 이제 오늘 이제 저 센터로 생기 툴들 장가 상가 미도한테 터버릴 때 있다 치면도 뱉다지 맞지 다지 좋아하는 게 다들이야 그 상가티 양부터 시기야 말이야 메시리야 이 치면도 뱉다지 좋아하는 게 특이야 말이야 공부를 보이네.
So the point is that there are finer distinctions that can be made based on scriptural descriptions. One of the distinctions is in relation to sharpness, relative sharpness of the individual's faculties. So generally, sharp faculties or dull faculties or middling faculties. Bodhisattvas can vary in that regard. So then there is a phrase which translates as the signs of irreversibility. The signs of irreversibility are described in various scriptural sources. These signs are identified with different types of bodhisattvas based on the sharpness of their faculties. So it is said that the bodhisattva of sharp faculties can achieve the signs of irreversibility even during the preparation path, before achieving the transcendent path. The preparation path is the second of the 5 paths. It's a path that leads to the transcendent path. Then the bodhisattva of middling faculties doesn't achieve these signs until the transcendent path is achieved. So from the first bodhisattva, Arya bodhisattva stage, middling bodhisattva middling faculties is described as having achieved signs of irreversibility. Then this duller bodhisattva of duller faculties does not achieve them until the 8th stage, 8th bodhisattva stage is reached. So, as was mentioned earlier, then the possibility of falling into the lower path in the sense of forming, for brief periods of time, kind of the inclination to pursue the peace and tranquility of Hinayana Nirvana is appealing, and so that inclination can arise in a manifest form, and so that is as a bodhisattva, then one has the bodhisattva mind, and so one has the rational thought that this is to be avoided, but nevertheless that inclination can show itself, and then it has to be suppressed. So the danger of forming those kinds of thoughts for bodhisattva dull faculties can exist all the way up to the 8th stage, say, based on one's character over lifetimes. There's another source, another well-known scriptural source, which Lama Tsongkhapa addresses in one of his texts that's called Taju Nyugu. Taju Nyugu is a special text that is kind of auxiliary to his treatises on the Gyumed Tantra, but he picks up a number of topics. And this particular one that deals with five different kinds of bodhisattvas in terms of their ability to make progress on the path, how quickly they can do so. And there is a scriptural source which uses the metaphor of the carriage that one rides in, being how fast one can move. So the slowest one is the ox cart. The second one is an elephant. Then there's in Indian mythology, the sun and the moon are thought of as being a means of conveyance through the sky, for instance. So they are a kind of vehicle. So they move faster. So those are the third and the fourth. And then the fifth one is a form of conveyance that is as swift as thought. And so the idea of being a swiftest thought is an idea and an expression which has some connection with miraculous powers where by the strength of one's thoughts, one is able to reach a certain, actually physically transported to some far distance place just by thinking of the place. Kind of the way of describing this, the fastest kind of Bodhisattva. Presumably, obviously, that would be one of the sharpest faculties. The one who is travels in the ox cart would be the one of the dullest faculties. And corresponding to that, it is normally in the descriptions of the length of time that it takes to achieve enlightenment. There is the most familiar expression is that there are 3 spans of time, each one consisting of a countless number of kalpas. And normally that's the standard for how long it takes to achieve enlightenment. However, there are other scriptures say that is 7 such spans of time. Another says 10. Some say up to 40. One of the ways in which these distinctions are made is that one sort of course that can be followed in the path to enlightenment is one can actually follow the Hinayana path. So Rinpoche corrected what he said, that among the 5, the first one is the ox cart, second one is elephant, then the third one is addresses both the swiftness of the sun and the moon, and the fourth one is swiftness which is like that of the miraculous powers of the Arhat, Hinayana Arhat, and the last one is swiftness which is like the miraculous power of the Buddha. So that's one correction. Then among the longest way to reach enlightenment is for someone to achieve Hinayana Nirvana and then remain in that state of Nirvana for a great period of time, and then be awakened from that state by the Buddha and confronted with the fact that one still has the remainder of the path to Buddhahood facing one. So that kind of Bodhisattva, that kind of Arhat, who then becomes a Bodhisattva because that individual has gotten rid of the mental afflictions, that sort of equanimity becomes an obstacle in that one is difficult to empathize and develop compassion to the extent that someone who has not eliminated mental afflictions. So an interesting idea. And so that person who has experienced the peace and tranquility of Hinayana Nirvana directly in his own past, then that person is more likely to be confronted with that experiential state, the recollection of it, and then it becomes something difficult to surmount and to kind of force oneself to leave and set out onto a path of developing the ability to benefit others. So that is given as the example of a slowest kind of path that can be followed. So these are various distinctions among the particular course that can be followed along the way to enlightenment.
다 견디고 인데들 개인 개디 기타 진이 나미니 이시시 버다비치 어디 리베인데 순 저인데 순 시점이 리베인데 순부터 기타와리바스 진이바리바스 나이시시바 다바 순제 기타 진이 나미니 스두가 기타와리바스 진이바리바스 나이시시바 다바스 리베인데 순제 다 저인데들 잡아제 처질에 좋아 투질에 좋아 메질에 좋아 저인데들 순제 드네 이미 간디라니 리베인데 스티티 지게트 아니 저인데 지지차 지전에 게리
So the main characteristics of the Bodhisattva Sangha of irreversible Bodhisattvas then are characterized by 8 qualities. And these are referred to as the 8 spiritual qualities of knowledge and freedom. So we're talking in the root text about verse 13. Is where the qualities of knowledge are specifically mentioned. So the 3 qualities of knowledge are knowledge of the way things are, knowledge of the breadth of things, and knowledge of inner purity. So Jidawa means relates to generally ultimate truth. Jinyeva means the full extent of things, generally relates to conventional reality. And then Nangi Shisikba is some sort of introspective awareness. So there's 3 kinds of knowledge, qualities of knowledge. Then there are 3 kinds of freedom. Freedom from the obstacle that is a form of attachment. The freedom from the obstacle that is a kind of resistance. And a freedom from that tendency to develop an inferior attitude. Those are the 3 freedoms. Then, so there are mainly 6 qualities. The way you get 8 is that those 3 that relate to knowledge are sort of a class of knowledge characteristics. And then this 8th one is then the combination of the 3 kinds of freedom. So it's a way of counting that ends up with a total of 8. So these are the Sangha Ratna are defined as those beings who are endowed with these 8 characteristics.
That is. That Jidawa University. Singing never company with what the rationality. DJ Semi Chuni. Company to be in Jidawa University. That's Geneva University. Singing. Sincerely, singing as she told me this. Send it Tangela. Chavanieva is Geneva. The Chavati, send it Tangela, Geneva. So,
among the 3 knowledge, the knowledge of the way things are refers to the knowledge which directly perceives the luminous ultimate nature of the mind. And that is the seed of enlightenment directly. Then the knowledge of the extent of things is the awareness. It's a particular kind of knowledge that characteristic of the mind is universal, that it is present in everyone. The Gyumed in the sense of foot, it covers all sentient beings. So that's how the first two qualities are described.
Oh, this is that. The Sangye Gurumbi, Sindra, she don't believe me. Since the chubby, a shabby chub, a shabby chub. He is an Sinja Tangi.
So it's that this potential for enlightenment is described as Sangye Gyurum. Sangye Gyurum means capable of becoming a Buddha, capable of becoming enlightened. That is a way of describing that ultimate nature of all sentient beings' minds. So this second form of knowledge is one which clearly realizes that this capacity in all beings, there are no beings who lack it. And that has implications to it. That has an implication, spiritual implications to it. So in verse, I believe it's verse 13. This is the opening verse describing the Sangha Ratna. So the following verse, 14, refers to them by name specifically. And let's see, where is it? So let's try the numbers correct. Yeah, it's the same. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So 14, verse 14, only makes reference to three characteristics. It says in this Japanese scholar's translation, it's purity of perception by introspective knowledge. That's the third one. And then in the second line it says, so far as its manner and extent are concerned. Those are the first and the second ones. So those three phrases have to be unpacked in terms of all 8 of these qualities. So the purity of perception, purity of interest, the purity of the perception by introspective knowledge. So that is, on one hand, it represents one of the qualities of knowledge, one of the three qualities of knowledge, the third quality of knowledge. But it implies also the three qualities of freedom. So as a quality of knowledge, it explicitly refers to a purity that's associated with that ultimate nature of the mind, a realization of that purity. Purity is described as the purity of being free of those three kinds of obstacles. So the obstacle of attachment represents the mental afflictions. Of resistance represents the subtle obstacles, the obstacles to omniscience. And then the obstacle of being vulnerable to the inferior attitude is the third obstacle. So the purity that is perceived by the Mahayana Arya when he or she perceives the mind's ultimate nature is the purity that the mind's natural state is to be free of all of these obstacles. None of these obstacles are inherent in the mind's nature. Then, that represents the third quality of knowledge. And then by implication, when they achieve that realization, they begin to free themselves from the adventitious form of those three types of obstacles. So it has to be interpreted in that way out of those three phrases to come to the six qualities, three of which represent qualities of knowledge, three of which represent qualities of freedom, making total of it.
That is, Tineta, Jita, Jita, Genti, Raishingi, Yosuta, Roashi, Chungi, Dochi, Jita, Ni, Deyang, Raishingi, Yosuta, Yomon Dune, Services. The Jita, Tobe, Ishiti, Roashi, Chungi, to Chelsea, Ni, Roa Seti, and the Roa Seti, Kansata, Pungu, Jube, Roa. Keji, Kansata, Pungu, Jube, Roa Seti. Sidan Keji Dwara, Keji Dwara, Shachu, Dwa said. Kansa the Pungu Dwa, Ranshingi Shive, Chungi, Ranshingi Komba, Nusum the Tobich, Jay. Taking Papa Namki, Satambur China, Satambur Pili, any Chita Kimba Indi, any Kansa the Pungu Ranshingi Shive, Chungi, the Ranshingi Tomba Nusum to Tobich, Jay. Or deep Tobayan Chita can be in the SJ. That day, Dilian Kuzeni, Chita was Silver Kuzeni Aris. Similar Shingi, Yon Daba Sivatans, similar Shingi group of never Yinsa, Chiche. Yomon doing a Servati and Shingi Servata, Matuba Yinsa, Semikura Rashingi. Savache, Rashidi, Matura, Rashidi Matura, son. No, any Chitawaria Merva, Chitawa, Tombani Muslim, Merva, San Rashidi, just a deep to Jita, similar Shidi, Yostava, Sivaches, Chiche. And Yamon doing a Servati and she used much of the Tobich, meat, Uzeni, Chitavari Uzentilla, Chassi Papa Nangi, Chitavari Baby, Pumbuta, 풍부 주변, 간사의 풍부 주변과 라신기 시외 중이 시발이 무슨 도발이 있어요. 다른 생기 중요한 신 무슨 도발이 있어요. 이 또비 그전에 그랬으면 생라신기 매버리. 디마세 묘모라신기 세버리. 묘모라신기 맞추어봐. 이해서
So then this first quality of knowledge is formulated in a kind of logical statement, which is meant to be a statement of what are the reasons for asserting that the Mahayana Arya has attained the knowledge of the way things are. So the statement is that there's a term in Tibetan droa, which comes from a root which means to go, and it gets translated. Usually it refers to beings. In the original Sanskrit, jagat can refer to the world, that which moves. And so here, in reference to this term, it's saying that goer means those persons, those individuals, or those collections of the five skandhas, which are changing from moment to moment. They're goers in that sense, in that they're constantly undergoing change. So, however, that is not their ultimate nature. So their ultimate nature is the fact that the Arya does not perceive that as their ultimate nature, but does perceive their ultimate nature. So the subject term is those beings, those goers, who are, constantly evolving and constantly being reborn, samsara. Then the Mahayana Aryas perceive the way they truly are, perceive their way of being, what their ultimate nature is. That's the thesis, right? And the reason is because those Aryas perceive that those beings, those goers, are not self-existent. And their lack of self-existence represents their ultimate nature. But in addition, they also perceive as that ultimate nature that those beings have never had, their minds have never been inherently tainted by the mental afflictions. Dharmane seva means they have been free of the mental afflictions of self-existent, innately existent mental afflictions, being the essence of their mind, part of the essence of their minds, have never, since beginning, have never had that quality. That represents part of what it means to perceive their ultimate nature as well. So one part is that they are not self-existent. That's one half of the reason. The other half of the reason is ultimate nature being that they've never possessed self-existent mental afflictions. This is what it means to So this word, which same word as clear light, that's the Tantra. I'm not referring to that here, but it's the same term. It means some kind of luminous nature, that the mind's ultimate nature has some luminous quality to it. That's its natural state. Means that mind's nature is that it lacks any self-existent quality, and that lack of self-existent quality is something that has never been tainted by mental afflictions. That ultimate nature itself is pure. It has never been polluted by mental affliction. It's always been that radiant, luminous quality.
Then Timalu, I yes, Timal, then she Matu, Timasin to go.
And another way to say that is that the stains, the mental afflictions, the faults, the mental faults that cover the mind are therefore adventitious. They are temporary. They come and they can also go. So to say the mind's nature is luminous, and the stains that cover the mind are temporary.
Means that 시제 털도 또 별로 시제 털도 또 별로 승기랑 승을 힘이 받도록 이것들이 탐지 계획 주민이 승제 탐지 나이에 따라 통제를 진이 예반이 있다지 시제 털도 지다 공유심도 또 별로 탐지 계획 주민이랑 신기 동반이스 다 탐지 계획 주민이랑 신기 동반스 탐지 계획 주민이랑 신기 동반스에 지다랑 신기 동반스랑 신기 동반스에 지제 생기 주민 당 나바 탐지 계획 주민이 그때 라신이에 매베 동반이가 탐지로 집어봐 동백 만두 코아다냐 내는 대가 이거지 동백 만두로 집어이 동백 만두 이해가 이 지게로
이 semgi nelu tartuk dan sangi nanti jama
탐지 시 디기 중이 이거
chini ginangu
동바로 집어봐 집어이 시에서 동바이 생제 탐제라 이거 무슨 또 배치를 진행해 봐. 근데 동바이디 승제기 주인이 당 승제기 쓴다 탐지 김비 이신이 그래서 라시 chen 개감이가 동반이지 승제 탐지가 여버시가 있어 진이버시가
So if the previous point describing the reason why the person has achieved the realization of the way things are. That was mainly related to verse 15. Then now in verse 16, it's describing what it means to recognize in that realization that this nature is present in all beings. So it says, that it says, the first half of the verse is saying that that quality of being the way things ultimately are, that ultimate nature of the mind, right? Then that represents an object that is perceived by an awareness, a form of wisdom that is perceiving the ultimate object to be perceived. And what is implicit in that realization is that the ultimate nature of the unenlightened being's mind versus the ultimate nature of the Buddha's omniscience within the realm of emptiness are indistinguishable. They have the same quality, so they are identical. Another way of saying that is the ultimate nature of nirvana and the ultimate nature of samsara is one and the same, undifferentiable. So in recognizing that, then the mind is able to comprehend that this is a quality that applies to all beings. That all beings possess the same ultimate nature in their minds, of their minds. And that ultimate nature of their minds is, in an ultimate sense, indistinguishable from the ultimate nature of omniscient mind of a Buddha. Quality, that pure luminous quality, is one and the same. So that is the second quality of recognizing that how comprehensive that knowledge is, how it is able to be, able to infer from that everyone has that same capacity. Somebody W Latin Chalure.
이제 담보니 유도 제발 때네.
So.
담보니 부디스는
Right.
담보니
Right.
진이바다 지다와 또베 켐바니야.
Right.
켐바니 부디 수술 시베에서.
So the third form of knowledge of the purity, realization of purity introspectively, is described as based on the separate qualities of the first two, the qualities of the way things are and the universality of that quality.
셴더 투는 많이 봐. 수소랑기 얘네들이 이식이 통 의식이 통한되도록
This is verse 17.
어저께 이식이 수수기원은 수수기원 이제는 되어서는 바바제로 그런 바바남 통주디 아니 수설한 이식이 통수겠지 랑이면 또 지친다봐
맞아요.
지다 김대리 시다 김예바 김대리 시디 바바 수수기를 통주를 통네 이 챔버봐
맞아요.
챔버에서는 이시식부터 배치해야 되니.
So it's saying that these first two forms of knowledge are gained by virtue of the fact that the Arya himself or herself is perceiving this purity of their own mind. And that is the third form of knowledge that is described as perception of the purity introspectively.
그때는 차도기 개발에 좋아하니까 철집당 도집해야 돼. 저기 그래서 경기에서는 어떤이 맞아봤다. 시작 탐지를 내주더니 이제 이시소 시다와 신유와 시바니 선제는 감단한 시계 넘버터 유진치라. 댕지기 차반에봐 따뜻히 차반이 댕지를 샤 댕지기 차반에 네 그래서 그래서 차도면 차바세야지 댕지리야 차바세야지 이야기 댕지리야 그래서
셴바스.
이 상계를 미비 차바 상계 차바세지로 상계를 미비 차바세지 상계를 미비 차바세지 상계를 미비 어떻게 찾기 매요 이 차바디 겐지를 지어 상계를 미비 겐지를 그러가 상계를 미비 겐지가 상계를 남는 미비 겐지가 근데 결혼소를 차바 쳤어야지 결혼소를 차바 쳤어야지 차바디 뒤에 땡지를 쳐버려 뒤나시 차바 매봤어야 돼 어디 땡지기 차바 매봐이 나왔어 진이바시베 미디 시제 농업을 타미베 이베나 토바 매봤어 너머니 시바에서 아니 인지기 차반내가 토반내가서지 딜러의 동반이 시제 탐지를 쳐버려 시바에서 아니 토반내가서 차도내가서 진이바 시바니 시제 뭐 탐에 유진이 토반내가 차도 매봐서 차바 매봐 철집질이 매봐 도집질이 매봐서 지다와 시집 가르치 그래
땡매.
거기에 대반 매봐 시바인사 주 담제를 대반 매봐 시바인사
잠바.
땡지기 차바 매봐지 철집 매봐지제 다 진입었으니까 이 시들이 디자에 생겨난 생겨난 시기 마주거든 이제 탐제를 쳐봤으니까 토반 매봤지 아다 토반 매봤을 때 지단 시작을 토반 매스으로가 샘레 토반 매스으로 때 시작을 토반 매스야 때 토반 매봐 토반 매봤을 때
주변 매봐.
아마도 뒤에서지 신이바시바에서 뭐그이지 시저 탐매의 유지에서 토반 매봤을 때 Gyumed 로티 이비찬이 시절 문부를 탐해봐라. 시절 문부를 탐해봐서 디케봐서는 도움해봤지.
So now addressing the qualities of freedom. The first one is freedom from attachment. Second one is freedom from obstruction. So if something obstructs your mind, and the mind is blocked, it cannot go beyond that. It's obstructing in that sense. Attachment, on the other hand, is something that is sort of adheres to something, a form of attachment in that sense. And normally we think of the word attachment to be a kind of desire. But here, the attachment is a more subtle form of attachment, which is the mistaken belief that things are self-existent. That type of attachment. So one can say one can develop attachment towards the state of Buddhahood, and that means that one believes Buddhahood to be a self-existent goal. Develop attachment for the transcendent path, in the same way that one can think of that path, that state of mental realization, as some kind of real mental state. And to the extent that one forms that erring belief, that's a kind of attachment. So perceiving things as they truly are means to perceive that they are not self-existent. So by perceiving the way things truly are, then those Mahayana Aryas gain varying degrees of freedom from that kind of attachment to the notion that things are self-existent. Then freedom from resistance, or freedom from obstruction, follows from the recognition, in particular, that the nature of the mind is this luminous purity of lack of self-existence, and that is a quality that is universal. Then what flows from that realization is an awareness that this quality is unlimited. And the notion of being unlimited means that mind can encompass all beings, and it is not it's not held back. It is not obstructed from taking in that quality in the sense that it applies to all. So that second freedom flows from the second kind of knowledge, second kind of realization of the breadth of the application of that realizations, that all the minds are ultimately pure.
That did maybe develop society, and the most can be like environment drawing son maybe develop society.
Some bit kasa satube
Sakyavati
sakyavati Then the third freedom, to be free from that inferior propensity to develop an inferior attitude, and that's not explicitly described in the text, but it is explained as being something that is gained specifically by the Bodhisattva Aryas of the 8th stage and higher. They gained the freedom, which is to be no longer even potentially subject to that attitude, which would have an inclination to abandon the higher goal of pursuing in life. And that is an obstacle, that is an obstruction, which still exists below that eighth level. So, among the various contexts for talking about stages of irreversibility, the Bodhisattva who achieved the eighth stage is described as having reached the stage of irreversibility in the sense that that Bodhisattva is no longer subject to possibility of developing rangden yije. Rangden means seeking one's own welfare to the exclusion of others. Yije means that form of thought, that form of engaging objects. And that represents in manifest form the obstruction that relates to inferior attitudes. Then when they reach the eighth stage, they no longer are subject to that. And so they're cannot irreversible in the sense of no longer even potentially subject to.
No, that can do in the day, but rebellion there soon check. And drain the soon check. They're gonna drain the rebellion the crime. So
to summarize, these are the 8 qualities associated with the Mahayana Arya Sangha. Those beings who possess some portion of or all of, so it's not all of them possess necessarily all of them, because this last one is only achieved at the 8th level, but then even at the 1st level, they possess forms of the first 3 kinds of knowledge and the removal of portions of the kinds of those freedoms. So there are 3 kinds of knowledge, 3 kinds of freedom, then a combination of the 3 knowledges and a combination of the 3 freedoms, making up the 8 qualities that are associated with the Mahayana Arya Sangha. So that portion of the root text up through the first 18 verses, first couple we're talking about the overall body of the text, then whichever one it was, 4th, 5th verse, something like that, starts with the Buddha Ratna. Up to here are the verses that describe each of the 3 Ratnas individually. Then at this point, starting with verse 19 and several following, are addressing the notion that they represent a refuge, an object to take refuge in. And what is it about them as objects that makes them deserving of being called an object of refuge, each one individually as well as collectively? And then what does the act of taking refuge consist of? So this topic is now what we
다 gyab이 되게 gyab들은 gyabs야지. gyabs야지. 근데 지단 근데 이렇게 되는데 이렇게 되는데 bstan 이제 kunju 되는데 이렇게 kunju 이렇게 한번 뭐 이야기 지단 들지는 이렇게 이렇게 kunju 이렇게 되는데 이렇게
So there's some basic distinctions relating to the act of refuge, taking refuge. One is gyumed. Gyumed means taking refuge in the object as a cause. Gyumed is then taking refuge in an object as a result. There's two ways in which one can carry out the act of taking refuge. Then among the three ratnas, then one form is the ultimate object of refuge. And then other aspects of the three ratnas are then the conventional object of refuge, especially as these are described in this treatise.
Debut, Jampa on the Genetic, Sanjay teaching Debut Jampa, making debut, Shreddy, Ranjik debut, and Kindu, Yendu debut, just number shower is. Dinner, Tibasunda, Jesunda, Kasa 2 years. Tibasunda, Lamdo Shubasum, Lamdo Mashubasum. Then you never own any different number shower in say that to the shiver. Number shower.
So, looking now in particular at verse 19, which addresses the act of taking refuge in a variety of different ways in as relates to the three vehicles. The vehicle of the listeners, the vehicle of the Pratika Buddhas, solitary realizers, and Mahayanists. Then among those three vehicles, the result of those, the result form of taking refuge for the Mahayanist is associated with the Buddha. For the Pratika Buddhas, the result form of taking refuge is associated with Dharma. And for the listeners, the Shravakas, Sangha. Then in addition to that, distinction, here it talks about three kinds of devotion. This word adimukti or moga. Then the form of devotion generated by those who have entered the path, lamda shukla, those form of devotion that is generated by those who have not entered the path, lamda shukma shuktane.
Teaching the lamda shube, teaching the teaching the lamda shuba. Tibetan my shoot, my Jujan. Ni tell a chubata, Chavara, chatty Jubala, teaching the teaching my shubachi. Teaching the lamb to shubachi, my shubachi, and do the teaching the lamb to shubachi, my shubachi. And I get it in the lamb to shubat, my shubachi, is just. Yusan,
Truk.
Tibasum Stiche, Jesum said to my sugar teacher. None to own jetties, it is rather never on teacher.
Then Gutave.
No, Casati, Casati,
Truk.
Come never did it,
Sum.
never Yerba, never did it that. Casari, Casar, that thing never soon teaching the children never, Rajagi children never, near to the children never.
They shook them, shook them, shook Kasati.
That the is never is Jibashan and never. Young never did Kabashan. Check the Chabala, top jet to chick. Yeah, to get to my check, Chabala. Charlie Chabala, so she had to never in chick.
So, each of the three vehicles has its devotee, its respective follower, which can be one who has entered the path and one who has not yet entered the path. So each of those three vehicles followers has a form of devotion that is associated with that vehicle's ultimate goal, Buddhahood, the nirvana achieved by the Pratika Buddha follower, and the nirvana achieved by the Shravaka vehicle follower. Then the manner in which they express their towards the three Ratnas as an object of refuge then varies according to whether they entered the path or not yet entered the path. So those distinctions are being referred to in this 19th verse.
That is that is Kibusunda, Jesunda, never know the ocean. Kibsum number shall I said it, Raragi.
So
Never the today.
So
They just shut.
the object of refuge then has a special importance for those three vehicles and the followers of those vehicles that were identified.
Oda, Gyumed on the channel, Kangolo. Teaching here, and Sanjay teacher to the chatting here. Rajay reaching the captain of the king. Nendu reaching the captain of the channel.
Gyumed one to tell.
Gyumed on the channel. Any charity and Karasa, Chukunjuti, Yamsulan Jata. Any Karasa. Can you conjure the number to the Tato in the Chiba Channel? Can be some free temple on the channel? Any Regisum Bay, Kunjasunga, the Capsicles. Temple on the channel? Any Regisum is Chiba Chimbu Jingi, so Sanjay Capsicles. Rajay Jingi, so Chile Capsicles, Sanjay. Subject to Jimaris. Marini to get dinner. In the realm of the Genesis, there's a number showing said the theater. Chichi, subject to the age shaggy is. You get it on the channel?
So distinguishing the taking refuge in the three Ratnas in a causal manner for the followers of all three vehicles. The act of taking refuge is virtually the same, in the sense that the followers of all three vehicles regard the Buddha Ratna as the teacher of the means of refuge, who teaches what constitutes the refuge. They all recognize the Dharma Ratna as the actual refuge, and they all recognize the Sangha Ratna as the companions, those individuals who are support one in one's efforts to take refuge. So all, whether you're a Mahayanist or a follower of the two Hinayana vehicles, then that way of approaching the three Ratnas is the same. The result aspect, the result manner of taking refuge refers specifically to the followers of those three vehicles, the goal that they seek. So in that sense, the Mahayanists principally take refuge in the Buddha as the goal that the Mahayanists seek to attain. Then the Pratyeka Buddhayana followers take refuge principally in the Dharma as the goal that they are seeking to achieve, and the termination of all the mental fissions, obstacles. And the Sangharatna, in terms of the object of their devotion, they are principally directed towards the community of practitioners.
Teaching 지난 기타 가르치는 상기 주고와 둘째 두 지게라. 둘째 두 지게리 란제리 지다 니두리 지 상기 주고와 둘째 두 지기 말. 자산 계절도 장 상계 군주디 teaching 기제 비교하셔라.
그렇죠.
다 란제 가르치는 rangi chandu chene so nando tendi la nando yanda ba tu nyambal juba tu tendi ge ku tene nando nyamba shaba tu tendi rangi chibos ani Kurang kebetulan jenis, tu tentu nyata kerana nanti tunggu jenis, nanti nyapa siapa tu tentu. Nyentu sih tu lah, siapa tadi cuci ni, ni tentu nyawa, coba tu tentu nyawa isa, ni itu kunci jatuh, tajam tu kuah. Jatuh cinta ni tajam dia. Ikarasnya, nyentu des terus bersitu lah. Nyentu saya sudah. Nyentu saya di sudah tu ni, cus, yang disambut cus, sini. Ini cus saya di tentu tu jaga, coba tu tentu ni dia. Jasa, ini tu kunci.
This is a notion of the act of refuge, which is making a broad. There's a broad sense to it. There's also a very personal message about the nature of the act of taking refuge. So, in the case of the Mahayanists, the Mahayanists motivated by the desire to achieve Buddhahood for a particular purpose. So in that sense, Buddhahood represents the goal that will, in fact, satisfy the aim that the Mahayanist is seeking. And so, in that way, the Mahayanist is taking refuge in the Buddha as the goal that he or she sees as the necessary aim to achieve. So in taking refuge in the Buddha, it is taking refuge in the Buddha as that goal that one is determined to attain for oneself. In the case of the Pratika Buddhas, the Pratika Buddhas are qualified by their nature of no longer needing a teacher and having the understanding that they need to achieve their result, knowing what their result is, not being concerned about propagating it to others. So the Dharma Ratna represents the means by which they can focus one-pointedly on a realization usually associated with the doctrine of dependent origination. And that's something which, in order to achieve their goal, then their main, the Dharma Ratna represents the refuge for them in the sense that they recognize it as the means by which they can internally focus one-pointedly on a subject that will bring them their goal. And so that's what the Dharma Ratna represents for them, and so they mainly focus on the Dharma Ratna as their object. Then the followers of the so-called listener's vehicle. This is a little listener vehicle, a little bit of a misnomer. The Sanskrit word is Shravaka, and Shravaka comes from a root which means to listen, but it's a causative form. So it doesn't so much mean to listen as it means to cause others to hear. And so the Shravakas are, their kind of identity is associated with hearing the doctrine themselves from the authoritative source, such as the Buddha, and then causing it to be heard by others. And so in that sense, they are associated with the Sangha as a community. And so their goal is to achieve arahatship within a kind of social context that the Sangha represents. And so in this treatise, their object of refuge is defined largely in connection with the Sangha.
Devi gap Seneca said Rangi Jungi gap Sundutin gaps here. Ani Shegi the tools and they gap those. Ani you get cigarette. Then a Taja Tumbati and you get and Tine Taja Tumagi Chilsum. One of the chilsum, but you get it. 아니 밥에 긴게 이네 잠자야라 소바타 규격스인 거래. 단 레저기 단계 투쟁기에 산게 산게 이 투기 뭐라미 아니 기타 기주 생에 산게 밥에 긴들이 소리가 이 터도 치랬어야 돼. 아니 탈투게 아니 인디쿠션 kunjoyari 출kunjoyari 산기 kunjo야. 근데 랑도 톱절기에 겹순들이다. 다른 톱절기에 겹순들이 겹시게 따디 톱에 치도 매주지야 되나. 이 담을 시게 매주지. 그러나 나나 제격 조치와인지 나는 나한테 되고 남지 시비해봐 바로도 집에 그발라 규격 조치와인지 그래서 내 규격이 장미지 장미 무슨 아니 저 바로도 집에 둘러서 봐 길봐 귀 네, 그 발을 듣지만 두세야 제로와. 어떤 거 어때? 아니, 그래서 발을 듣지만 들어가는 규격조 처리인스.
규격조.
잠부. 이 잠부조 처리인스.
아, 진짜 봐.
나 그것을 재미있게 용다시 스베테 마음반의 요약이 용다시 스베테 다든에 남주치네 지게야 봐. 이 던져 토제 던지는 지게야. 그래서 먼저 하고 공부를 해서 마음반의 요약 양내지 단단히 지기야 봐. 그래서 이제 일단 또 처리인지 어찌해서 내비장도 써야 돼. 마음바나 라는 게 둘째들의 겹순부터 되게 아니 나는 저 생기 규례 두배 겹고 내가 다시 두배 두 규례 겹순부터 먼저 그 규격이 신규를 두선밖에 없습니다. 먼저 다자분들이 규격이 없습니다. 그래야 매로 먼저 파지티브 쓰는 그 타데스 나리에는 상계 규칙이 필요해요. 해야 왔다 비해서 단대 제리는 디토리아 매리 나라도 토리아디 그래서 라하는이야 조선에 라하는 게 토제의 상계 예리 마음바나 투기를 나는 토제의 상계 단대 투네 다자를 좀 같아 토제의 상계 예들이 디티는 다자를 좀 잘하는 토제의 상계 투기야 맞다.
So these two ways of taking refuge in a causal manner, taking refuge as the result that we wish to attain ourselves, are two different manners of taking refuge. One way in which they're distinguished is the causal form of taking refuge is one in which we take refuge in qualities that have been achieved by beings other than ourselves. So Buddha Shakyamuni achieved omniscience and possesses the qualities of a Buddha. And so when we take refuge causally in the Buddha, we're not taking refuge in the fact that we are going to achieve the qualities that Buddha Shakyamuni achieved, because those are his qualities. And the Dharma, the qualities of the Dharma that he manifests and that are manifested in the Sangharatna as well, in causal, taking refuge in causal way is taking refuge in those who have already achieved those characteristics, and that then we seek some form of protection, so to speak, from those beings as a source. So the causal manner of taking refuge is has that essential quality. But what's being addressed here, the result manner of taking refuge, is describing an act of refuge, in which the object that we are taking refuge in are the qualities that we seek to attain ourselves in the future. So when we take refuge in the result way, when we take refuge in the Buddha Ratna, what we have in mind is that we ourselves are seeking to attain as a Buddha in the future. So our own Buddhahood, our own future Buddhahood, is what we are taking refuge in as the fulfillment of our underlying motivation, and that is the culmination of our spiritual, impulse. That's what drives us, is to become that thing in which we take refuge. And that's very different from taking refuge in the Buddhas that already have attained enlightenment, and those great Arya Bodhisattvas such as Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara, who can be guides and provide assistance separately from us to bring about our own spiritual advancement. Taking refuge in them that way is different from taking refuge in that goal that we ourselves seek to attain. It's a little bit more, there's more conviction in that result form of taking refuge, in the commitment that you have towards attaining the goal. There's more a sense of fulfilling yourself as a way of satisfying your needs, so to speak. Another way to think of it, another way to distinguish them, those two ways of taking refuge, is not completely parallel, but it uses the same language, cause and result, that has a sort of instructive aspect to it. So the non-tantric Mahayana path, the path of the perfections, of the paramitas, is sometimes called the causal vehicle. And the tantric form of Mahayana is called the result vehicle. And one way of distinguishing between those two aspects of the Mahayana practice are that we see the perfections themselves as the causes that we need to develop in order to attain the ultimate goal of Buddhahood that we seek. In the same way that taking refuge in the Sri Ratnas causally is seeing them as the necessary factors, the necessary conditions for us to develop causally. Buddha is cause in the sense that he teaches. Dharma is cause in the sense that it brings the attainment of the path. Sangha is a cause in the sense that they assist us in our efforts. But the Tantrayana practice is called the result vehicle in the sense that the manner of practicing is one in which you identify with the result that you're seeking. So Devu is the result, Buddha. Lam Dujeva means that path itself, the form of the path, is the qualities of the ultimate result that we seek to achieve. So we identify with enlightened state as the manner of practicing the path in order to actualize those qualities at some time in the future. We're not deluding ourselves, but we are we are identifying with that result currently, now. And so, in a sense, taking refuge in the result way has that way of more identifying with the goal Uttaratantra, which was that the Buddha Ratna is the manifestation of the perfection of all three Ratnas. So he is the supreme form of the community, and he possesses the highest form of the Dharma in his very being. And so, in that sense, the Buddha Ratna is in every way the ultimate form of it.
In that light, since Shakyamuni Buddha has passed on, I seem to recall there was a context in which it said that the Sangha refuge, since they are the only ones who are present, and they are the avenue through which we access.
Here, or
yes,
oh,
in this life, the avenue through which we access the Buddha and the Dhamma. Is there a context in which Rinpoche would say
Tene
that's
kalsa pena di sangye shakyatuba ki tembe kap ki res di dajak tembe kanda yume tembe di yume kap re ine sangye chomden di yangen tembe chuten sagre san nanan mus je ayo mane Tesanti sangi kitemba di zingen di to di ta induko chusorchi tumbe vares. Tesan di chane ani induko chudi yang di tingsangi tu le terve ani kyamye ta. So they represent the means. That tab because that kujosum di Karsa. Sure, should be developed in a Karsa. Jubun Sorchi. He's going to mother. And you're going to be married. So then.
So that without the Sangha, there's no possibility of accessing the Dhamma.
So the things I get competition. Hindun the manner, and it should be a top memory.
근데 일단 genju 생긴다. 딱 되게 최대 단단히 다자고도 최대 순대 최대야래. 최대 단은 좀 경우들이 최대가 하나 tembe Javanus, Landes, Janus, Jampa the Ninji to Sukangati did Jamuanti did it. One Jamir that Jamuanti did it. And it telling Yamneti September Timber SCA.
No.
They did you much about Troja about Conais. Chill, that's way. Sangi temper the Seati. Only temper the Anton, Tobet, but the Antin. Only temper the Diati, Chosam goes and switching the charity. Only temper the Ati. Get on the Yarba. Tobet temper the Tobet temper, the Troja of Conais. Ragil and Yamnechani. The Tuvachiati, Tomatin Barangil Tuvati, Tomatin Bata, the Pambata Tobani, good answer, long day. Anything Tomatin Bata, Tibachi the Solam Yari, or the Yasanet to Su, you let. Tuvachiat, Tomatin Dimba Sierra. Then, Nandu, Mundo Temple Dignity, Chita, you can join Kuyama. And then, no temple to some nutrition to Chinetla, and you can join Kuyama. Son of John Yari. You will come a day. Tobe temba lava sunda subati shishare. Lava chutin lava tingi lava shira. Habi lava sunsi. Jamdu sibe lava sumbati. Tobe temba shawe. Til yula yunyeti tanda pabe kasari yungunyam. Jangan tanda tobe temba ta nungu temba tingeti tanda yaris pabe kinti mena seta mena kanchen terci.
Well, kind of joke at the end of it. For his own benefit. I think the response that he made to you was to say that he came back to the notion that the Dharma is the actual refuge. And despite the fact that the Buddha Shakyamuni is not present, that doesn't mean that the Dharma is completely dependent on the Sangha Ratna per se. Now, those words were chosen carefully. So the Sangha Ratna, by definition, can be a single individual. It doesn't have to be a community. The Sangha Ratna means someone who's an arhat. And so the notion that the Dharma depends on the Sangha Ratna, kind of the phrase that he was using to discuss it was the Demba Zimba. Demba Zimba means the holders of the Dharma. Holders in the sense of those who preserve the Dharma, those who maintain the Dharma, keep the Dharma alive, so to speak. And he said that that notion of those who uphold the Dharma, upholding the Dharma has two senses to it, right? Based on the fact that he used the word teaching, which is here synonymous with Dharma. So there is the Dharma in the sense of the scriptural teaching, and then there's the Dharma in the sense of a form of realization or attainment. And so those who uphold the scriptural form of the Dharma don't have to be arhats. That essentially involves the maintaining of the activities of teaching the Dharma, keep having the Dharma be taught and therefore heard and studied, and by so doing, giving the opportunity for those who have heard it to reflect on it. So those are the main activities that relate to preserving or upholding the scriptural Dharma. And those don't have to be arhats. Also, in the case of the Dharma of realization, or Dharma of attainment, that refers to any level of the path that one may have achieved. So regardless of the form, the lineage or the vehicle that one is following, to have attained any level, beginning with the path of accumulation and beyond, and anyone who's attained any of those levels of any of the paths of the three vehicles, those persons who have done so are upholding the form of the Dharma that is a kind of realization or attainment. And if they are person who has not yet achieved the path of seeing, they are again not an Arya. So those persons can be upholding the Dharma realization as well. So in either case, he was kind of responding to the notion of the Dharma Ratna being the essential quality for maintaining the Dharma. He's giving examples of individuals who do not rise to the level of the Sangha Ratna, who nevertheless can be carrying out the sensual activities that preserve Dharma. That's kind of the force of his response. But then he said, sort of the joke at the end was, if we don't have any form of the Sangha Ratna left, then who knows? I mean, I shouldn't be the one saying where it was.
It's on? It's on, okay. In other teachings, in other classes, when we talk about Buddha nature, I'm a little bit confused because thank you. In other classes, in other teachings we've talked about Buddha nature, luminosity of the mind, and obscurations that keep us from attaining Buddhahood. Now, I was always under the impression that in our particular lineage, that it's not just about Buddhahood or luminosity and obscurations or ignorance is what's keeping us from Buddhahood, but that we had to have many causes in order to attain Buddhahood. Whereas I'm getting like a mixed message maybe, because I'm getting like this message that, oh yeah, we're all Buddhas, but it's clouds that are keeping us from like realizing that we're Buddhas. So maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Franse di Ningamash, Rinpoche Kudin Rik Kor, Fran Nigares, and Tanda Sidualia, and Rik di Sidualia, and Sempi Rashi was out at the Tanzania, Siguare, and the Kodikuduan, the Krastana, the Karsangama. Rinpoche Sungju Nalia, Nato Kangalo Rgyud, Sangi Toyala, that comes a Rgyud, and it dbye, and it Topcha Taki Sangi Gogande. That's Sangi, that's a Rgyud, and Sangi Go Toyalia, Yuzo Mamuchi, Zongu, the Kasa, the Jewish Toyala. The Initanis do not. Rgyud insan aranto kanga logi karsa domani ani yomong sevres chumbre di sidu bana ta naru da sange sarare solchi gores ne di dos yam na solchi ko set dos tubres okay
The money are sick service, sick majores. You move the tambo, Tamadu, Shula, the man never chat in the Marua. Tambune, she never, she sever, she majore. This year I wish you. The money, the you must ever this year. You move yare. You move around, she severs and she major. You move the Tampa Temba, then Pungira to come, you move the Rashi ever seven maris. The man and she tabaris. Same day, the man and she tabara. Rashi is Maturava, and just she is Sabas.
So the phrase in the Uttaratantra is somewhat provocative in that it says that since beginningless time, the mental afflictions have been terminated. But that doesn't mean that they don't exist. To say that they are terminated means that specifically that they have never been self-existent. So another way to put it is, it's not as though the mental afflictions prior to our being enlightened were self-existent, and that through our efforts, then we cause them to lose their self-existent nature. So, I mean, he's not suggesting that's what you're saying, but in our way of thinking about being self-existent or not being self-existent, there's a certain error that we're subject to. And so the nature of the teaching, this particular teaching, is to correct the notion that there is such a thing as self-existent obstacles. So there have never been self-existent obstacles, and so the sense that they have since beginningless time been, terminated, means the false notion of self-existent obstacles is a delusion, and its ultimate nature is this innate purity. That's not suggesting in any way that the obstacles are not, in a practical way, something that we need to be concerned about and remove. So do the obstacles exist? Yes. Are they self-existent? No. Do they lack self-existence? Yes. Yes.
Rinpoche, I have a question regarding for those of us who are not enlightened. We do have great motivation and conviction to somehow, someday will attain one of the 8 qualities or become the first level of Arya. However, we don't know when that's going to happen. It can be eons. We don't know, but we really want to practice. And so, in our tantric practice, we do have a prayer to be reborn in the pure land of the enlightened ones, ladies, so on. So I believe that we have to be in the radar of those enlightened beings in order to get help from them. That means we have to meet them halfway or practice to a certain stage that we can be connected to them. And so that's when my question is, so for those of us who would like to have that happen, what level of practice do we need to achieve now as enlightened ones, as unenlightened ones?
Gangan kita wasing di machine doktor sorti na Ling di jindu konjo ke 뭐야, rgyud 이제 이제 그래서 전선 바빠 이렇게 해서 딱 먼저 톱자 버시셨대. 나는 스틸라 뭐예요? 나는 스틸라 아니 알았어. 그럼 때문에 토야라 그래 이거 알았대. 나는 또 사실은 알았어. 똑같은데 톱 매봐 밑쪽에 차샤나 알았어. 아니 무슨 양내 나오야. 사과도 나쁜 양내 나오야. 물론 쪄서들 지가래. 나는 저기다. 하트 속에 신감 나는 게야. 물론 그래야. 그래서 요하래. 나는 좀 레와체서 이제 요하래스. 아니 이제 레와 루비아야. 아니 나는 수찬에 기견들 상국에 알았어. 이 누구한테 하다 수다 유효지래. 대화지 유 이내 간사. 그런 유효 상기 지금 말 나는 수찬이 한 튕기는 소리 좀나 아니 하다 속에 유효지 아니 나도 젠투기 알았어. 제가 나는 저데 시라 야 이건데 시라 매번 감들이야. 아니 하다 좀 나서 죄하게 유효가 나서 테라 소리지 단 기에 저 아니 그런 소 유연된 저 클래스 장국에 가래서
아니 내가 저런데 답심이들이 잘 죽었습니다. 다음에 또 싫어니. 연락 때는 아이 기저체 나한테 했다세나한테 아니 다들 저 데테레 그래서 답심이부터 아니 저 답심이들이 잘 죽었으면은 나가면 이제 내가 주고 동료도 배시를 내는 할지조 이 지향에서 제정은 동반이 있다. 전주도 씁니다. 동반이 뒤에 뒤편에 아니 다 그러니 합니다. 대불랑 지체 뭔가 게었으면 좋든. 근데 기름 쓰기에 이 기름 듣다가 지켜서 근데 소름 쓰야지. 어디 저번에 했으니까 또르지 당신이 때문에는 아니 나 그냥 내지 가버린 친구를 또 뒤에서도 아람도 또 지야지 당신이 부디하고 뒤편에는 나기 예전에서 되게 지기나 이 당신들이다 나 다들은 유튜브야나 다들 유튜브야나 그래서 이렇게.
So the main qualities that you need are means and wisdom. The means aspect by means, which means then bodhicitta, and by wisdom he means the wisdom that precedes selflessness or emptiness. So those two qualities, without those two qualities, the unique benefits and the unique qualities of tantric practice cannot be attained or cannot be manifested. So you have to start there and to practice those as well as you can. And in addition to that, the main qualities of the path are to practice the two main aspects of generation stage are the divine pride of identifying with the deity, and then the visualizations in which you are able to the qualities of the deity's form. And then if you practice that stage sufficiently, then you can attain the completion stage. So the idea of tantric practice is to propitiate the deity. Then ha-dhruva in Tibet, ha means the deity. Dhruva means to actually attain the deity's status yourself. And so these elements are the ones that will allow you, enable you to be able to achieve that. So time is up. No. Okay, so what is that? Someone's urging is willing to take another question or something.
Rinpoche, in the last part of the discussion today, speaking about the fourth Vajra point of going for refuge in the three jewels and the three Ratnas, talked about the two different ways of doing that causally and from a resultant point of view. So my question is, as a resultant practice of refuge, specifically going for refuge in generation stage practice, is it appropriate to experience the object of refuge at that point being the actual deity in form, the singular form of the deity representing all three of the Ratnas?
아니 길게 대장 대 숨백가 나나나기 제부 가자 제부 태파 아니 감사 제부랑게 이 나는 손지 수두가 아니 프랑스나 겸조치도 아니 하드를 껴서 이 하디 아니 그저 숨기 단위 임발라 아장기 탑전디 상계 숨자로게 뭐 임발들라 아니 제국cap 저투들을 왜
이렇게 신경 많이 그를 다 있는데 진짜 제네리면은 이 서브젝트를 제발해 서브젝트 chen 왔다가 결수도 해야 돼. 결수도 해야 돼. 그러니까 레드 처리해라. 레드 처리해야 돼. 그래서 지도도 지내려면 공내 레드 가르쳐야 돼. 이 구간 들어야 돼. 레드 처리해라. 이게는 그냥 양해지도 제일 힘들어. 아니 이런 결수도 해야 돼. 자주 있으면 양해지도 들어야지. 자주 있으면 결수도 해야 돼. 장도 해야 돼. 처리 결수도 해야 돼. 이제 대신 이제 처음에는 아니 인지 친구 좋은 인지 친구는 동집에 대신 이제 처음에는 상계는 두드릴 수만 있어. 근데 나는 이렇게 숨을 쉬어야 돼. 자주 있으면 말씀 뒤에 장르 인지를 제비 장르 때 말씀 뒤 제비 장르 사기 주고 같은 지마는 것이 전주 얘기하라. 제비 장르 인지 가르치고래. 가르치고래. 치도 저 선제비 치도. 캡스도 아디 치도 저 선제비 뒤도 치도 상바디. 비장도 그래서 제비장도. 비장도 되게 제비장도니가 찬지.
진짜.
제주도 센터는 잠바다 인지 공부해봐. 잠바다 인지 자와제니 제주도 센터고. 잠바다 인지 현대 등이불로. 현대 등이불로 또 장인지. 장인지 신대탄데 등에도 되나. 대화던 되나. 현대 등이불로 세트리. 제주도 등이불로디 Ratnagotravibhāga, Gyumed, Sinjiri Tantra. Ani Gyumed Bisa Gyumed Cha, Gyumed Cha. Gyumed. 자산 아니 이 얼른 또 발기되라. 시 이 발기되는 순이야. 근데 민지에 대시 인데 통는 아니 산재도 계속 거기 계속 들어와야지. 그래서 선생이 저기 니지 좀 보내라는 대시인데 토스는 산재지 그만 던지고 들었어요. 이 제비기 산재를 계속 들어와야지. 잠들이. 아직 잠들어야지. 기발심이 잠들었어야지. 잠들었으면 제 노바지 상에 전주 도제 전주 등등의 전에 제도자와 다디 셔지 내세다 생기셔야지 노바 이거 샤야지 시비찬에 잠도 쉬어야 시비찬에 생기 쉬어야 맛이 찌바이지 어제산 운동에 잠도 생겼지 사기 주고만 텀들기 자주 생기 잠도래 텀들기야 차세들과 텀들지 그 먼저 교화에는 다 잠들인데 결세 숨겨야 그래서는 교화지 쪽이 이제 정말 레드치 찬이 교화를 해야 레드치 찬을 넣었어야 돼. 세상 교화에는 잠들인데 결세지 해야 돼. 어디에서는 제주도 센터시 잠들이 아니 니지 친구들이 잠들이 잠들지 어디 어디 장도 생애들 접수 군주를 지체네 chen 삼백지 구비야 말이야.
So, Rinpoche's answer started with the way you formulated the act of taking refuge, and he ended with the way you formulated. And the way he started was that he said it's not necessary to think of the deity that it's your practice, the object of your practice, as embodying all aspects of the refuge objects. In Tibetan there's this phrase, Gyabne Kundu. Gyabne means refuge object. Kundu means you are the all embodying you're the embodied by all aspects of it. You can take refuge that way, and at the very end, he said, thinking of the day as embodying all aspects of the refuge. And then he used an expression which is often used to describe the act of refuge. Very interesting, very nice terms. Chen means you, object of refuge. You are sort of beseeching the object of refuge to take notice of you, to be aware of you. Chen means literally. And by invoking that wish to the object of refuge, then you're placing your trust there. And that's one way of describing taking refuge, but it's not the only way, and it's not. He didn't emphasize that. So he said the main quality that he was discussing was the fact that the act of refuge is essentially your hope and trust in a particular object. Re is rewa, means hope. Der means then to turn yourself over to that object by placing your trust in it. And so then he said, he started out by saying, you look at that deity that is your main practice as the object you seek to attain, and you hope and trust in that. That's really the essential quality of taking refuge in the day. Then he shifted to bodhicitta. And then he said the aspirational form of bodhicitta, a wishing form of bodhicitta, that's also an act of taking refuge. When you generate the aspiration to achieve enlightenment, implicit in that the fact that that's the goal you seek, that's your aim, and you are putting all of your trust in pursuing that goal. So in that sense, generating the wishing form, but it is a form of taking refuge. The result form of taking refuge. You're taking refuge in that goal that you seek by forming that mind. And then he talked about the two aspects of bodhicitta. One being the goal, which is represents your own aim, perfecting yourself. You fulfill your own aim, which is to be able to achieve the ability to help others. And then the second aspect of it is shendun. Shendun means the welfare of others. Dundunyewa means to be intent upon that, means essentially from your compassion and from your loving kindness. Those are the two main qualities that represent that aspect of bodhicitta. So both of them must be present for the complete form of bodhicitta. So in that seeking the goal, it has mainly the result form of taking refuge, as was described. Then in your chetijao, means on whose behalf you seek that goal. That represents the shendun, and the aspect of the wishing bodhicitta that is concerned about others, as evidenced by or is manifested by your compassion and loving kindness. That has both of us, both the causal and the result forms of it, because you see that goal as the means of fulfilling that in particular. So he talked about that mainly to say that bodhicitta itself can be thought of as an element, a way of manifesting refuge mind. Then he said, it's very interesting, he said, kind of using logical language, any virtuous act that you accomplish by the fact that you pursue a virtue, that represents a form of taking refuge. In the sense that you are placing your trust in the efficacy of that virtue. So it's a kind of refuge mind, and that you're recognizing virtuous activities as something that has a beneficial quality. I'm trying to amplify what he said, how it is placing trust in it as you see it as a worthwhile thing that has a purpose that will serve. And so otherwise you wouldn't apply yourself to engaging virtue if you didn't think of it as having a useful and beneficial. So in that sense, even there's this phrase, any mental virtue is a refuge type mind.
in this way, 유심 짬의 양스, 유바생기다, 상계란 통제를 dinle 차네, 제이케스. 선제를 펜데크바탄 이 저발을 주대 차네, 유결이 양의 차에스, 창치스. 이가 단체를. 아니, 생기지 잠발 그냥 유익장도 창기하고 제익장도 창기하였어. 어디 발진 들어래. 선제는 인재신 대시인들 토미나 대시시에 탐제라 두두 교수 소행스.
Can do
두두 교수 소행스. 발진 들어래. 선제는 인재신스게 대시인들 토미나 대시시인들 토브라메나 네 대시시에 탐제라 두두 교수 소행스. 대시시에 탐제라 교수 도와레스.
the
발진들.
Javadre.
이 발진들이.
So
발진들이 아니 네 어디 제가 됐지만 어디 어디 그디디 군주 괜찮스 인디다 군주 진이 공부 야세 다 가반도 디로마 진이 공부 열바 어디 로마 군주 괜찮스
this is a text by one of the disciples of Gyumed one of the Jampa.
두수 강가데 지진자 안드자의 샤바비 네 이게
Jamsha's incarnation and his disciple. So in this commentary was a passage that which also alluded to from that makes reference to a verse from Arya Shura's summary of the Paramita Samasa, which is a first text. And the commentary is talking about the second form of bodhicitta, which is the form of bodhicitta that is engaged in the bodhisattva activities. So Jupa Semgye, person who recognizes what is required in order to achieve the goal that you aspire to and begins to undertake those activities. And the Jupa Semgye is the mind that generates those kinds of activities. Both of the qualities also apply to wishing Buddhist, but in this commentary it's talking about that. And point being made is that, as mentioned before, the object is to achieve Buddhahood, the aim is on behalf of sentient beings. And so it makes the same points about what aspects of it, of that wishing bodhicitta, or sorry, in this case, active bodhicitta, constitute particular forms of taking refuge. And then having made that statement, then it quotes this verse from Ayashuddha's text, and I can't remember all of the particular words, but it's, the essence of it was that if your aspiration to achieve enlightenment is accompanied by the compassion and loving kindness towards all sentient beings, then that kind of mind, which is the essence of bodhicitta, then short is the act of taking refuge. This is a verse in the Paramahansa.
Yeah.